Hey, this is Mark Mumangi welcoming you to day 2 of Design with Markie Season 1 2021 edition. I want to create an Instagram post. So you can see that I already have a canvas with the sizes already set. So let's go ahead and create a new document. This is how your Photoshop looks maybe. So you go to File, New, and then you're not going to select anything from the top, art and illustration. We are going to enter the dimensions manually. That is what I said. So the title of our document, you can call this Instagram post, and the dimensions, you're going to use 1080 by 1080 pixels. Width is 1080 and height 1080 pixels. So make sure that the unit of measurement is pixels right here. You don't have to change the orientation. It's 1080 by 1080, so it's equal in both sides. Resolution is 300 pixels per inch. Color mode RGB for social media, but for print you will be using CMYK. And then click create. Sometimes you will open Photoshop and then the first thing you see is this window for a new document. So just go straight ahead and enter the dimensions and then click create. So there we are, a blank canvas in Adobe Photoshop. Where do we start? How do we begin making this poster for Instagram? So we have our canvas. We want to do maybe a quote, a photo quote, or maybe you want to do something with your picture and a motivational piece, yeah, something of that sort. So the first thing you're going to do after determining your desired kind of design that you want for your Instagram posts, let's choose something random. You may not need to add a new layer here, but we will I'll show you how to do that. So we can just begin with the design, a simple one. You can grab the square tool, the rectangle tool, sorry, and once done, you can draw a rectangle at the bottom. So be creative. Design is all about creativity. You don't have to do the exact thing that I will be doing today. And then from the top, yesterday we used a solid color fill, so today we're going to do a gradient fill. The gradient fill is right here, the third option. Once you hit on the gradient fill, there are any kinds of gradients that we have, and you can click on each and preview them as they change. Okay, so we have gradients which have maybe this fading effect, others have different colors, so you go for what suits you, okay, and the kind of design that you want to do. So let's say you want that kind of gradient with the orange kind of thing, and maybe that is not the color you want to use. You want maybe a blue or purple. So right here there is this bar which shows your gradient. You can actually adjust it. You can adjust the location of that color, but you will do advanced details about gradients later on. So these are called color stops, the ones that you can see move back and forth. These are the color stops, and you can use them to change the color. So you can see that this color stop is highlighted with the color which is at the bottom of this gradient. So each color stop, you can have up so many color stops in one gradient. That shows that you'll also be using different colors for a gradient. So if you double click on this, that color picker menu opens, and then from here you can select your desired color for your gradient. Let's say you want something purple, either a dark one or a light one, and then you'll be able to adjust the brightness of it. You want a light color or a dark one. So once done, be sure to click OK so that the change takes effect immediately. So the next thing, you can see that this is kind of faded, so the color can hardly be seen. You double click on that color stop, and maybe you just want to leave it as it is or choose a different color. Okay, so we did a purple, that was a light one, maybe we don't want too dark but something just in the middle here. So you can double click and drag, okay, to make a selection for the desired color. But here with these arrows you just drag down or up. Okay, so once done, let's go back to this purple and pick a dark one that looks okay, and then hit okay. Let's go back to the move tool so that we can preview, so we can see that we are giving our canvas shape. After having maybe that background, we don't want it to be too fancy at the moment, so you can adjust the rectangle according to maybe your desired size. What do you want that gradient to be? If you want to free transform the rectangle, we said you use the Control and T to open the free transform tool. If you drag it up, you'll realize that it's only the top part which is moving. Let me just cancel that. Yesterday we said if you want to confirm that is you're okay with that effect that you've done, you hit okay. That is to confirm. But if you want to cancel what you just did, you click on that button or use the escape key. If you want to make a uniform adjustment so that the size of this rectangle is adjusted uniformly, you hold down the shift key, and with the shift key held down, if you drag up, you will see that it's changing. Okay, as I move it up, it's also adjusting itself on the sides. But if I do that without holding down the shift key, you can see that it's only moving to the top and then back again to the bottom part of it without affecting the rest of the parts. So if you want to transform your object uniformly, you hold down the shift key and then make the necessary adjustment. Let's move on to the next thing. So what do we want to put in this Instagram poster? We already have that gradient. So I want us to group our work at this stage, and maybe it will give us a good flow. Okay, if you want to group your work, you can unlock the background layer. Just click on this icon here which shows a look. It's right here at the top. You can see it right besides the fill option. So if you see this lock, it indicates that that layer is locked and you cannot edit it. So apart from controlling its visibility, there's nothing you can do to this layer. So you can just unlock it or keep it locked. If you want to group items, for example, I have the background layer selected, that is my background layer, and hit Control and G. You'll see that there's that group which appears now. That layer has been put in a group. How do we rename a layer or a group? To rename that, just come right here where we have the group name, double click, and then the text will be highlighted. So just type background and hit enter. So you will see that your work has been grouped. So you can either click this arrow to reveal or hide the content of that group. For the rectangle, with the rectangle highlighted, make sure you are only highlighting the areas which we are working with. Let's assume that we want to group these and name it. Maybe that is where our design will be for the visuals and all that. Control G, and that layer will be grouped. And click on that arrow to hide the details. Double click on the name and say this is your design. So you can see that we have two decent groups. That makes sure that your work is not scattered. It's in the layers panel. You don't have too many layers. You just put them in groups. You can also create new layers on your own. We'll do that with time. So let's say that you want to add something like an image. You want to place an image into our design. So how do we do that? You go to file, the file option from the top here, select file, and then from these choices you go down and move to place. You want to place an image. You can place an embedded image or a linked image, but now we can just use place an embedded image, and when you click that, your folders will open. And if you locate the one you want to use, double click on that image, and then automatically your image will be loaded and placed on the canvas. So it's a large image. It may take some seconds to load, not minutes. Of course, it's I think 6 MB, yeah, too large. So we have our image there. Once you place our image, confirm that option so that you don't lose it, and then your image will now be available for use and editing. Remember yesterday we said in layer basics that you will choose which layer appears on top of the other and which layer will be at the bottom of the other. That is, you are actually in complete control of that. Okay, at this stage, when you want to move an image around the canvas, you use the move tool. This is where we want our image to be, and you can see that it's on top of the rectangle, and maybe that is not what we want. So you can select the rectangle and move it up so that the image is below the rectangle. But maybe let me just undo that by pressing Ctrl and Z. Maybe you're not happy with the image, you're not happy with the background. How do you delete a background? How do you make selections in Adobe Photoshop? If you're in Adobe Photoshop CC 2020 or earlier versions, there's that option for automatically selecting a subject. So it's not always perfect, but it helps. We said there are different ways of making a selection in an image. So let me zoom in a little bit by pressing Ctrl and the plus option in the keyboard. You can use the sliders to move right and left. So let's assume that I want to make a selection in this image. Let me zoom out a little bit so that maybe I can see every bit. Where we have this tool, this is called the magic wand tool. If you right click on it to reveal the other tools, you can see that there is a quick selection tool below it and also object selection tool. How do you use the quick selection tool? If you select a quick selection tool, if you can't see it locate any of the selection tool, either the magic wand tool or the object selection tool, right click on it and then you'll be able to see the quick selection tool. Okay, so the quick selection tool finds edges in an image. That is how it works. From the top here, you can see that there are different options for a new selection, adding to selection, and subtracting to selection. So with these tools selected, you can adjust its size. You can increase it by pressing the square bracket, the right square bracket, and if you use the left square bracket, you will see that the size of that selection tool is reducing. That is how you adjust the size of your selection tool. You use the square brackets. The right square bracket, it's enlarging it, and the left one is reducing the size of it. We have our selection tool. Okay, I just want to show you how that selection tool works. So just reduce it. We don't want to use a very big sized one. If you left click and move it just close to the edges, you will see that it's making random selections in an image. You can see that, okay, but then it's not a perfect selection. Zoom in with the Ctrl and plus option, and then there is this option to either add to selection or subtract from selection. If you select the subtract from selection option from the top here and come to your image and click there, you'll see that the areas of course are being reduced, and then it's kind of making my selection more precise. But the add to selection option is the inverse of the subtract from selection. This is subtract from selection and this is add to selection. Once you've chosen that option, you can reduce the size of your brush by using the left square bracket and just drag it along that line, and you will see that those parts are being added to that selection. Well, I said it needs a lot of fine-tuning. Let me just undo that. But if you want to deselect everything, you press Ctrl and D to deselect everything. So we will learn the rest of the other tools with time, but now I just want to show you the quick way, the auto select subject option, which is available in Adobe. Select your image, highlight it in the layers, go to the select option, and then click on subject, and then Photoshop will automatically detect the subject and make a selection for you. As I said, it may not be very perfect, but you may need to go back and fine-tune it. You can use the eraser tool to delete the background. You can use the background remover tool to remove your background. But if you're doing professional designs, you can ask for, maybe you can use images with plain backgrounds. They will be so easy to edit. So that selection, Photoshop has done a nice job. It's almost perfect, but you can see that the ear has not been included in this selection. That means it will be omitted, but we don't want that to happen. So what do? We want to add this ear into that selection. So don't change anything, just go back to your quick selection tool and the add to selection option. Make sure that your size of that tool is small. You can adjust it by using the square brackets, okay, either the left one to reduce it or the right one to increase its size. Yeah, that is almost perfect. And then around the face here we have some details which have been left out, so just we are adding it to that selection. Just move it around that line and let those details be added. So it has been overdone. Maybe you don't want this upper part. Remember we said the quick selection tool makes use of edges, so it detects edges in an image and snaps itself to the particular edges. So that is almost a fine selection. Let me also add some parts here. Some details are missing. Yeah, that is a good one. We can work with that. If you want to delete the original image with any of the selection tools here, come back inside this selection and right click. So there's an option to deselect. Deselect will undo everything that you have done. If you select inverse, for example, if you select this option for select inverse, you will see what is outside the selection has been selected, okay? And then if you try to delete it, you will see that you cannot complete this request. How do you resolve that error? Because I know you're going to face it even tonight when you be trying this. Maybe go back to this image, don't deselect anything, okay? So let me just undo it so that my image is selected. Come back to this smart object. A smart object, when you enlarge a smart object, it matches the aspect ratio and all that to make sure that your image is not being distorted, as opposed to using just raster images. You want to make it editable, so right click on your image and select rasterize layer. If you want to make a copy of your selection and still have a copy of your original image, which maybe you may need to edit, right click on the image and make sure that the selection tool is selected. Move over to this area inside the image, right click, and then layer via copy. You don't want to make a layer via cut because there will be left some space on your original image. We just want to make a copy of the selection and hit layer through copy. So you will see that a new layer has been created right here. So what you do, hide the original layer by clicking this layer visibility option, and you will see that we have a an image with a background which is almost perfectly selected. It's not so good, but it's good for demonstration. Make sure that you make this image a smart object so that when you'll be enlarging it or reducing its size, it will not look bad. Okay, so right click on it and then convert to smart object. As you can see, this image is inside the design folder. We don't want it to be in this folder. So select the two images. If you want to select items or layers one by one, you press down the control key. Select the first one and then make your first selection. Holding down the control key, select the second one and then right click, left click, and drag them up. When that blue line appears, if it's double, it means that they will be added into that folder. If now it's narrow and slightly above the folder, it means that you'll add it above that design and release. So you can group them together by pressing Ctrl and G and name that layer maybe image and then the design. So you can choose whether you want your design to be above your image or below it. So go to design, you can move it up. Don't bring it inside here. You can see that if it's highlighted in the top and bottom of that folder, it means if you release it, your design folder will be added to the image folder. That is not what we want to do. We want to move it above that folder. So take it further and make sure that it appears above the folder and release. So you can see, go back to the move tool and you can see that our layer, our rectangle is above the image. So what are you going to do with this image now that maybe we have a rough idea of a design of what we want? You can either choose to enlarge it by using Ctrl and T to enable the free transform option and then holding down the shift key. I said you hold down the shift key. If you don't hold it down and you drag this part, you'll see that the image is losing shape. Okay, we don't want that to happen. So let me undo by pressing Ctrl and Z. I want to enlarge it uniformly, and to do that you press down the shift key and then enlarge it from either side that you want it. So you'll see the all of this image is being moved, and that is perfect. So that size is okay. Just confirm your transformation. Now let's add some simple text to this design. So let's go to our typing tool, and then maybe we want something like focus. So we will fine tune it later. I did typography here. So we have focus. We want to duplicate this layer. How do you duplicate a layer first? Press down the Alt. You can see this is a black arrow. Okay, if you hold down Alt, you'll see that you have two arrows. So press down the Alt key, double click and drag down or outside. Your layer will be duplicated. So you can double click to change that focus. I'm just duplicating it quickly. I already mentioned how we do the duplicating option. Focus on the goal, or let's use price. Okay, that may sound better. Yeah, so you can see our text does not look so good. It's not arranged. We have different alignment option. This is left align. This is center align or right align. So for this kind of design, you might want to go for a left align. Okay, still double click on the on, align it to the left, on the align it to the left tool, and not price, that should be the price. Yeah, okay, focus on the price. So there we go, we have our text. It's not organized, but we've done some little bit of alignment. So an easy way to adjust and move these texts, just click once and drag. You will see this line which shows you when your text is aligned to the other, maybe on the top. If you drag down, it will help you know the size between your text. So you can see a line, that indication of a line running from the top to the bottom, and that means all those texts are aligned. If you hide the contents of the image, you realize that your text is together with the image, but you don't want that to happen. You want to have the text on a separate layer. So click on one of these layers and hold down the control key so that you can make selection of the other text layers. You can press Ctrl and G to group them. Say this is your text, click enter, and now we want to move it outside the image layer. So let me just hide the contents of the design layer, and with my folder selected, drag it up so that it's between the design and the image. So it doesn't have to be in the exact position. It depends with how you want to arrange your work. So if you want to transform the folder as a whole so that you change maybe the size of these texts at once, you can highlight that folder from the layers panel, press Ctrl and T, and you will see that every text inside that folder will be selected or highlighted. Hold down the shift key and maybe enlarge it from the sides. Drag it towards the left and click OK. So we are still building this design. It's gaining some good look. It's not perfect yet. So let's go back to focus. How do we change this font? Maybe you don't love it or you're okay with it. How do you change it? So if you click on focus, from my right here, you can see I have color on the top, I have swatches, I have gradients, I have patterns, and I have character. So you use the character option to make changes and adjustments to the text and anything that has to do with your type. So to change that, you have the name of the font that I'm using. This is Ebrima font. If you click on this drop down list right here at the end of this box with the name of the font, you will see that I have different fonts. Okay, if you know the name of that font, you can just type it directly. So go back to our font, click here to highlight it, and maybe I want a font something like a railway font, a railway bold, yeah, something of that sort. Let me look for the best. A railway black, that looks good. Railway black. Okay, now for fonts which are maybe different in different font styles, you will see that this is railway, and beside it we have the font style. If you click on the drop down list, you can easily adjust the font style. So you can use the arrow keys to move to change the font style which you want. So for example, if you choose bold italic, you'll see that my font has changed. If you choose extra bold, you'll see that my font has changed, my font style. This is where you set the font size right here. This is where you make adjustment to the font size. You can either hover over this and then drag, double click and move to the left to reduce, double click and move to the right to increase the font size, or manually enter the font. So select everything. If you want to enter it manually, select everything by double clicking inside here and entering something like 40 and click enter. So you'll see you have a size 40 font there. That is maybe too big. Let's do a 35 and enter, and that's okay. And We will do the rest of this later, or you can just do your research and exercise to see what each of these does. But basically, we are interested with the font size and the font style. So we have that Railway Extra Bold, and this one is a Bremer. And maybe we want to style our design a little bit by moving this to the center so that there's this special kind of alignment between them. You can make sure that the space between them is okay by dragging and looking for these. You can see these arrows, they indicate that there is the same spacing between those fonts. So that is focus on the price. And maybe we want to change the color of this font. I forgot to mention that. So the focus, if you double click on it, from the top here, there's this color. We used this yesterday for the fill. You can click inside there with the text selected and then go for a color of your choice, or preferably use the color codes that will still work for you. And once you're done, click OK. So you'll see that we have changed the color of our font. Okay, let's use a different method to change the font color. Just select, don't highlight, and move to the characters. We have the color option right here. You can click inside it and then this window pops up. So when you're inside this box, inside the color picker box, you can see that this thing is roundish. But if you move outside, you'll see that it changes to what we call an eyedropper tool. So if you select here where we have that sweater, you'll see that my color has changed to something grayish. You can use this tool to select a color which is maybe in your design. If you want this purple, you just use the eyedropper tool to select a random color, maybe from within the design, and this becomes easy when you want to match your color with your image. So you just open the color picker box and then drag until you have this eyedropper tool and select a color, maybe from your image or from your background, and hit OK. Let me just do that for the rest of this so that I move fast. Yeah, I'm done with the color selection. Maybe you want to add some effects to this text. How do you add those bevel and emboss effects? Maybe something like a drop shadow, outlines. How do you add those effects? So with right where we have our layers panel, you can see that this is the text layer which has been highlighted. You can double click on it at the far right of it, not in the middle or where we have the name. At the right of it, if I double click there, there's this option that is going to pop up, layer style. Okay, let me repeat that. With our layer selected, right click on it from the farthest end to enable the layer style menu. So double click there in the far right end, and then the layer style menu appears. So you can see we have blending options. If I check this, you can see some changes happening with blend, bevel, and emboss. Adding a stroke. Yesterday we said what a stroke is. Adding some inner shadows, inner glow, satin, color overlay, maybe a gradient overlay for your design, a pattern overlay, an outer glow, a drop shadow. So let's say we want to do a gradient overlay. You can go back and experiment with these. We want to use a custom gradient for our color, and I think this black and white gradient is okay. So once you check the gradient overlay, there is an option at the right for you to control the gradient style. you can change the blending mode. If you choose dissolve, you can see what is happening to our fonts. You have a good preview. So you can click anywhere and move it around, okay, so that you can be able to see the design. But then if it's so big, you can zoom out by using the control and minus to make a design visible. But I think mine is of a good size. Focus on the price, gradient overlay. Let's go back to the blend mode on the right and let's use normal. You can try different blending modes to see what each of them does. You can control the opacity of your gradient, okay? This is a 61. You can double click and drag to the left to reduce it, or move it to the right. I think that 61 was pretty good. Here is where you change your gradient style. If you click inside here, you'll see different gradient options. If you select a different one, you'll see the changes taking effect immediately. Like, that one looks so cool. Yeah, but I don't want to change that now, so let me just cancel it and ignore it for now. Your gradient style can be linear. If you select radial, you can see what is happening. If you select reflected, you can see what is happening. Experiment with those yourself. You can adjust the angle by yourself. Double click inside this roundish thing and move it. Here is where we say volume iko sawa. But this one is for gradient, of course. This is how you either add or reduce the angle of your gradients. Maybe let me go for something like a negative 146. That looks so good. So the scale, you can adjust how big or how small that gradient is going to be. You can add your custom number, and then if you are satisfied with this gradient style and you want it to be your default gradient, you can make it default. So once you are done with applying those effects, just hit OK. And maybe you are very happy with this layer style and you want to apply it on this layer with the price. It's good to put your items on different layers so that it gives you room to do full or complete editing. You have total control, okay, for each layer individually. Select the price layer. That is where we want to apply the same effects which are here. So how do we copy the effects and apply them in another layer? Back to our first layer where we have applied the effects. So you will see that there are effects right below this layer. So you can either hide the effects or reveal them using this hide or reveal option. Right where we started, you can see the effects is here. If you right click on this, you're going to see options like scale effect, hide effects, clear layer style. If you're not happy at all with this style and you want to delete everything, not the entire poster but the styles which have been applied, you right click on this and then clear the layer style. You see we don't have those effects anymore. Let me undo that by Control and Z. We want to copy the layer style, okay? So right click and go to copy layer style. Select that. So that style has been copied. Where do we want to apply it? We want to apply that same style to this price layer. Okay, this text layer with the price. So go back to the exact place, maybe on the right of it or just anywhere. Right click and then you're going to paste layer style. You'll see that the same effect has been applied in our new layer. We might want to change the color of our background. How do we do that? You can double click on your background layer where we have this shape, double click and this layer style opens, and then you can go for a color overlay. When you go to the color overlay, with it selected on the right, you have the option to change this color. The blending mode, you can leave it as normal, double click here or click once, sorry, and then select a color of your own and you will see that the background color is changing. So you go, okay, let me just cancel this and move this aside. So let me just zoom out so that I'll be able to see everything that is happening. So click where we have the color and select a different color for for your design. So this is how we change. That is just one way out of the many possible ways of changing the color of our design. You can choose just keep scrolling and look for the color that looks good for you and one that works for you. You can go for a dark one, a bright one, just something cool. Okay, if for example we are okay with that, you just hit okay, confirm this is what you want, and hit okay. So you can see that we have applied that color overlay effect in our background layer. So basically that is it about. We've done a little bit of selection, also some bit of typography, how to align your text. So for this one, you can center align them because we are actually purposing to use them differently from the others. And when you center align them, you can click on them and drag, move them to the center of your design, and that is pretty good. To make sure that you see what happened, my background layer moved. That should not happen. Control Z. So to lock this layer, with it selected, at the top here, you can see this lock option. If you click it, you lock the background layer and you will not be able to move it, and that will help you to avoid making mistakes. So the selection on this image is not so good. Let me enlarge it a little bit and drag it down and maybe show you a quick way to do away with those unwanted parts. Once I'm okay with that size, I can just confirm it by pressing that okay. Well, so this is our model poster for this course, and then I want to fine-tune some of these areas. You can see the selection is really bad, and you don't want to post these on social media. So what happens with smart objects, you can edit them independently or just edit it. You can choose to right click, rasterize your layer, edit it, and make it a smart object again. So let me say I want to fine tune this selection maybe by using the eraser tool. That is one of my favorite tools. It actually gives me some control over my design. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because this layer is not editable, I can right click on it and then rasterize layer so that it's not a smart object. I cannot be able to apply those effects in a smart object. So zoom in to make sure that you have a good vision of your area around the selection where you want to do the editing. And in your tools panel, locate the eraser tool. Eraser tool, here it is. Select the tool, and then you're going to, you see, if I click once, it erases my image. I don't want that to happen. I want a smaller brush which will maybe do small bits of selection. So we said you reduce the size by using the left square bracket. So I'll be doing it really quick. Just observe and pay attention to what I'm doing. We said so that for you to make perfect selection, you must zoom in really much so that if you make a slight mistake, it will be so hard to be seen from the outside, and also you will have good control over what you're working with. So you're just moving your eraser tool over the unwanted areas and deleting them, eliminating them. Just where you have an uniform selection. Okay, we don't want these areas. You can also make some little changes right here. So practice on the use of this tool, and then with time you're going to perfect it. There are easier ways of making selections. You can use a pen tool to make a selection and then later on delete. So you can adjust the size of your brush depending on how the area where you're making the selection looks like, the amount of space you have, and that will be so good of you. Just around it to make sure that everything is fine. And instead of using the eraser tool, you can also go for a brush tool, or you go for the select and refine option, and you can draw around this area. And to make sure that you don't get frustrated when making selections, learn to release your mouse left click button time after time, because from the start, if you hold down the mouse button and then just go over making changes to your image, if you undo, you will delete everything. Okay, but maybe you've moved a few steps, release it so that each progress is saved individually, and you will not end up losing everything. Well, that is almost perfect, not so perfect, but good for demonstration. You may realize that I have really messed the head. Okay, but don't worry, this is Photoshop, and you have the ability of manipulating things and making things work. It's a handy tool when it comes to manipulation and editing. So this is why you need some of these skills. You may be asking, where do I even need an eraser tool? We'll come across a design, maybe you are a web developer and there's a project and you have maybe to edit the images for yourself, and that is where these skills will help you out. You don't have to hire somebody to do it for you. Well, you can learn and do it for yourself. Let's say I'm almost satisfied with that. So focus on the price. With this image, you can see that it's very bright. Okay, let's make it a smart object once more. Right click on it and then convert to smart object. So if you're not so good with editing in Adobe Photoshop, you can always use maybe the custom edit options available in Adobe Photoshop, or make your own adjustments. That is, if you're really good in editing. So for example, if you select this image, with it selected, and to move to image, we have this option for auto tone, auto contrast, and auto color. So if you select auto color, you'll see that Photoshop will apply some effects on it. Let me undo that. Go to image, select auto contrast, see maybe the change is taking place. They may not be much, but in some cases they will help you so much. But then if it doesn't work for you, you're going to select the image, adjustments, brightness, and contrasts. I moved so fast. Image, adjustments. Here is where you can make a lot of adjustments. Okay, you can experiment with each of these: brightness and contrast levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, hue and saturation, color balance, black and white, photo filter, and all that. So let me go to brightness and contrast and move this aside. You can always move things aside so that you have some space. So if you hover over brightness, you will see this double-sided arrow appear. You can double click and drag to the left to reduce the size, to reduce the brightness of your image, or double click and drag to the right to increase the brightness. But we don't want to overdo it. Maybe let's make it slightly lower. Okay, and maybe lower the contrast or increase the contrast. And let's say, okay, well, I have an idea. Let me undo that. This image can fit so well in this design if it's a black and white image. So if you go to image and adjustments, you'll see black and white. So with that selected, You can move it, you can move this to make the necessary adjustments. Presets, these are Photoshop inbuilt presets for making your own adjustments to your image. Okay, so you have a blue filter, that is how it looks. You can try each to see which one works for you. High contrast, lighter, infrared, maximum black. So you can just see I'm selecting the drop down menu and clicking on different ones. Okay, so that darker looks nice. Yeah, nice. And then maybe you can still make further adjustments by reducing the reds, bringing them up a little bit, just to see what works for you. A 50, and hit OK. So that one has been applied, but the image is too bright. So I will go back to the image adjustments, brightness and contrast, and reduce the brightness a little bit. You can increase or decrease the contrast of your image. And click OK. That is a good sample. I said not so perfect, but good for demonstration. So let's say that you're okay with this particular Instagram post. Of course, you can do further adjustments to your image. You can do further editing. You can do some retouching to just make sure that your image looks cool. Let us save our document as a PSD file and as an image file. So go to File, Save As, save on your computer, go to your desired folder. My social media design is here, Instagram post. We already have the name, and click Save. So we want to save this as a PNG, export it as a PNG also. So File, Export, and click Export as PNG and click Save. So your image will be saved as a PNG.